Hey family, and anybody else watching, and welcome back to As For Me in My House. Today, Deuteronomy 1 through 3, and it's going out to Bob and Mary Lou. Now, if you remember yesterday, we were looking at some Canaanite boundaries, some Levitical towns, or Levite towns, some cities of refuge, and then also the inheritance of Zelophehad's daughters. Today, we have a lot. Good grief, we have a lot here. Big breath. Command to leave Horeb. We looked at the leaders, or we will look at the leaders appointed, spies being sent out, rebellion, wanderings, the defeat again of Og and Sihon, those two kings. We will look at the division of the land, and then also Moses not being allowed to cross the Jordan because of his disobedience. So we'll look at all of that just in these 3 chapters. So a lot here. So chapter 1 through 3. These are the words Moses spoke to all Israel in the desert of the Jordan, that is, in the Arabah, opposite Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab. It takes 11 days to go from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir road. In the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, Moses proclaimed to the Israelites all that the Lord had commanded him concerning them. This was after he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, and at Edrei had defeated Og, king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. East of the Jordan in the territory of Moab, Moses began to expound this law, saying, "The Lord your God said to us at Horeb, 'You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Break camp and advance into the hill country of the Amorites. Go to all the neighboring people in the Arabah, in the mountains, in the western foothills, in the Negev, and along the coast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates. See, I have given you this land. Go in and take possession of the land that the Lord swore he would give to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to their descendants after them.' At that time, I said to you, 'You are too heavy a burden for me to carry alone. The Lord your God has increased your numbers, so that today you are as many as the stars in the sky. May the Lord, the God of your fathers, increase you 1,000 times and bless you as he has promised. But how can I bear your problems and your burdens and your disputes all by myself? Choose some wise, understanding, and respected men from each of your tribes, and I will set them over you.' You answered me, 'What you propose to do is good.' So I took the leading men of your tribes, wise and respected men, and appointed them to have authority over you, as commanders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens, and as tribal officials. And I charged your judges at that time, 'Hear the disputes between your brothers and judge fairly, whether the case is between brother Israelites or between one of them and an alien. Do not show partiality in judging. You're both small and great alike. Do not be afraid of any man, for judgment belongs to God. Bring me any case too hard for you, and I will hear it.' At that time, I told you everything you were to do. Then, as the Lord our God commanded us, we set out from Horeb and went toward the hill country of the Amorites, through all that vast and dreadful desert that you have seen, and so we reached Kadesh Barnea. Then I said to you, 'You have reached the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. See, the Lord our God has given you the land. Go up and take possession of it, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, told you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged.' Then all of you came to me and said, 'Let us send men ahead to spy out the land for us, and to bring back a report about the route we are to take and the towns we will come into.' The idea seemed good to me, so I selected 12 of you, one man from each tribe. They left and went up into the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and explored it. Taking with them some of the fruit of the land, they brought it down to us and reported, 'It is a good land that the Lord our God is giving us.' But you were unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents and said, 'The Lord hates us, so he brought us out of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Where can we go? Our brothers have made us lose heart. They say, the people are stronger and taller than we. The cities are large and with walls up to the sky. We even saw the Anakites there.' Then I said to you, 'Do not be terrified. Do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God, who is going before you, will fight for you, as he did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes, and in the desert. There you saw how the Lord your God carried you, as a father carries his son, all the way you went until you reached this place. In spite of this, you did not trust in the Lord your God, who went ahead of you on your journey, in fire by night and in cloud by day, to search out places for you to camp and to show you the way you should go. When the Lord heard what you said, he was angry and solemnly swore, Not a man of this evil generation shall see the good land I swore to give your forefathers, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He will see it, and I will give him and his descendants the land and set his feet on, because he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Because of you, the Lord became angry with me also, and said, You shall not enter it either. But your assistant, Joshua, son of Nun, will enter it. Encourage him, because he will lead Israel to inherit it. And the little ones that you said would be taken captive, your children, who do not yet know good from bad, they will enter the land. I will give it to them, and they will take possession of it. But as for you, turn around and set out toward the desert along the route to the Red Sea. Then you replied, We have sinned against the Lord. We will go up and fight as the Lord our God commanded us. So every one of you put on his weapons, thinking it easy to go up into the hill country. But the Lord said to me, Tell them, do not go up and fight, because I will not be with you. You will be defeated by your enemies. So I told you, but you would not listen. You rebelled against the Lord's command, and in your arrogance you marched up to the hill country. The Amorites who lived in those hills came out against you. They chased you like a swarm of bees and beat you down from Seir all the way to Hormah. You came back and wept before the Lord, but he paid no attention to your weeping and turned a deaf ear to you. And so you stayed in Kadesh many days, all the time you spent there. Chapter 2. Then we turned back and set out toward the desert along the route to the Red Sea, as the Lord had directed me. For a long time we made our way around the hill country of Seir. Then the Lord said to me, You have made your way around this hill country long enough. Now turn north. Give the people these orders. You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the descendants of Esau who live in Seir. They will be afraid of you, but be very careful. Do not provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land, not even enough to put your foot on. I have given Esau the hill country of Seir as his own. You are to pay them in silver for the food you eat and the water you drink. The Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He has watched over your journey through this vast desert. These 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you, and you have not lacked anything. So we went on past our brothers, the descendants of Esau who live in Seir. We turned from the Arabah road, which comes up from Elath and Ezion Geber, and traveled along the desert road of Moab. Then the Lord said to me, Do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give you any part of their land. I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. The Amites used to live there, a people strong and numerous, and as tall as the Anakites. Like the Anakites, they too were considered Rephaites, but the Moabites called them Amites. Horites used to live in Seir, but the descendants of Esau drove them out. They destroyed the Horites from before them and settled in their place, just as Israel did in the land the Lord gave them as their possession. And the Lord said, Now, get up, cross the Zered Valley. So we crossed the valley. 38 years passed from the time we left Kadesh Barnea until we crossed into the Zered Valley. By then, the entire generation of fighting men had perished from the camp, and the Lord had sworn to them. The Lord's hand was against them until he had completely eliminated them from the camp. Now, when the last of these fighting men among the people had died, the Lord said to me, Today you are going to pass by the region of Moab at Ar. When you come to the Amorites, do not harass them or provoke them to war, for I will not give you possession of their land, or of any land belonging to the Ammonites. I have given it as a possession to the descendants of Lot. That too was considered a land of the Rephaites, who used to live there. But the Ammonites called them Zamzumites. They were a people strong and numerous, and as tall as the Anakites. The Lord destroyed them from before the Ammonites, who drove them out and settled in their place. The Lord, who had done the same for the descendants of Esau, who lived in Seir when he destroyed the Horites from before them, they drove them out and have lived in their place to this day. And as for the Avites, who lived in the villages as far as Gaza, the Caphtorites, coming out from Caphtor, destroyed them and settled in their place. Set out now and cross the Arnon Gorge. See, I have given into your hand Sihon, the Amorite, king of Heshbon and his country. Begin to take possession of it and engage him in battle. This very day I will begin to put the terror and fear of you on all the nations under heaven. They will hear reports of you and will tremble and be in anguish because of you. From the desert of Kedemoth, I sent messengers to Sihon, king of Heshbon, offering peace and saying, Let us pass through your country. We will stay on the main road. We will not turn aside to the right or to the left. Sell us food to eat and water to drink. For their price in silver, only let us pass through on foot. As the descendants of Esau who live in Seir and the Moabites who live in Ar did for us, until we cross the Jordan, into the land the Lord our God is giving us. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, refused to let us pass through, for the Lord your God had made his spirit stubborn and his heart obstinate, in order to give him into your hands, as he has now done. The Lord said to me, See, I have begun to deliver Sihon and his country over to you. Now begin to conquer and possess the land. When Sihon and all his army came out to meet us in battle at Jahaz, the Lord our God delivered him over to us, and we struck him down together with his sons and his whole army. At that time, we took all his towns and completely destroyed them, men, women, and children. We left no survivors, but the livestock and the plunder from the towns we had captured we carried off for ourselves. From Aroer onto the rim of the Arnon Gorge, and from the town in the gorge, even as far as Gilead, not one town was too strong for us. The Lord our God gave us all of them. But in accordance with the command of the Lord our God, you did not encroach on any of the land of the Ammonites, either the land in the course of the along the course of the Jabbok, nor that around the towns and the hills. Chapter 3. Next, we turned, and went up along the road toward Bashan. And Og, king of Bashan, with his whole army, marched out to meet us in battle at Edrei. The Lord said to me, Do not be afraid of him, for I have handed him over to you with his whole army and his land. Do to him which you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon. So the Lord our God also gave into our hands Og, king of Bashan, and all his army. We struck them down, leaving no survivors. At that time, we took all his cities, and there was not one of the 60 cities that we did not take from them. The whole region of Og's kingdom in Bashan, all these cities were fortified with high walls and with gates and bars, and there were also a great many unwalled villages. We completely destroyed them, as we had done with Sihon, king of Heshbon, destroying every city, men, women, and children. But all the livestock and the plunder from their cities we carried off for ourselves. So at that time we took from these two kings of the Amorites the territory east of the Jordan, from the Arnon Gorge as far as Mount Hermon. Hermon is called Syrian by the Sidonians. The Amorites call it Sinir. We took all the towns on the plateau, and all Gilead, and all Bashan, as far as Salakah, and Edrei, towns of Og's kingdom in Bashan. Only Og, king of Bashan, was left in the remnant of the Rephites. His bed was made of iron, and was more than 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. It is still in Rabbah of the Ammonites. Of the land we took over at that time, I gave the Reubenites and the Gadites the territory north of Aroer by the Arnon Gorge, including the hill country of Gilead, together with its towns. The rest of Gilead, and also all of Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half-tribe of Manasseh. The whole region of Argob and Bashan used to be known as a land of the Rephites. Jair, a descendant of Manasseh, took the whole region of the Argob as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Maccathites. It was named after him. So, to this day, Bashan is called Havoth Jair, and I gave Gilead to Machir. But to the Reubenites and the Gadites I gave the territory extending from Gilead down to the Arnon Gorge, the middle of the gorge, being the border, and out to the Jabbok River, which is the border of the Ammonites. Its western border was the Jordan in the Arabah, from Kinnereth to the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, below the slopes of Pisgah. I commanded you at that time, the Lord your God has given you this land to take possession of it, but all your able-bodied men, armed for battle, must cross over ahead of your brother Israelites. However, your wives, your children, and your livestock, I know you have much livestock, may stay in the towns I have given you, until the Lord gives the rest to your brothers as he has given to you, and they too have taken over the land that the Lord your God is giving them across the Jordan. After that, each of you may go back to take possession I have given you, or to the possession I have given you. At that time I commanded Joshua, You have seen with your own eyes all that the Lord your God has done to these two kings. The Lord will do the same to all the kingdoms over there where you are going. Do not be afraid of them. The Lord your God himself will fight for you. At that time I pleaded with the Lord, O sovereign Lord, you have begun to show to your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do the deeds and mighty works you do? Let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that fine hill country, and Lebanon. But because of you, the Lord was angry with me and would not listen to me. That is enough, the Lord said. Do not speak to me any more about this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and look west and north, south and east. Look at the land with your own eyes, since you are not going to cross the Jordan. But commission Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he will lead this people across and will cause them to inherit the land that you will see. So we stayed in the valley of Beth Peor. I think it's interesting there that mention that bitterness that we see from Moses there. What is that? That's chapter 3. We just read it. Chapter 3. And he says specifically, um, because of you. Where is that? Oh, I just saw it. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah. Well, he says it for some reason. I'm probably staring right at it, but he says because of you, and he's talking to the descendants right there. I mean, he's talking to the children of those people who Moses did these great deeds for, right? And I think that's so interesting that he's obviously hurt by this. I mean, this is a man who has felt that he served God his entire life, and he did, but he wasn't perfect. He was still disobedient. But there's some of that latent bitterness at the people, which I think is interesting. But more interesting, 214. 214 specifically says 38 years passed from the time we left Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Zered Valley. By then, that entire generation of fighting men had perished from the camp, as the Lord had sworn to them. There's a note here that says, as he reviewed the Israelites' history, Moses recalled with bitterness the series of rebellions leading to the 40-year punishment, quote, in that vast and dreadful desert. Actually, of course, the people listening to him had to be mere children when the divisive rebellions occurred. Their parents were the ones forbidden to enter the promised land, except for Joshua, Caleb, and Moses' own family. All those listening to Moses had grown up in the desert. So I think that growing up in the desert is such an interesting thing. I mean, there's that phrase out there, and I'm probably going to butcher it, that hard times make strong men, and strong men make good times. Good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times. So it's that cycle, right? And then hard times obviously make strong men. So I think that's really interesting that God seems to be kind of working in that cycle with raising a generation of people that will follow him. Um, but looking at Moses' response to that, Moses being one of the remnant now, right, of the old crew, Moses has led those people's parents and now is leading them and is speaking a bit here in bitterness. Now, this is just a moment of bitterness, but I don't know how bitter he was or if he was just bitter about this one thing. And I don't know that it matters a great deal. I know Moses was incredibly humble before the Lord, but it did get me thinking about how we live and about how you, Bob, and Mary Lou live, and this idea that how are we living? Are we moving forward with bitterness in our hearts, or are we moving forward in gratitude? And I think a lot of people tend to move forward while looking back, and that can be a very bad thing, or that can be a good thing. I mean, I think that looking back and moving forward shows us to be gracious, or well, shows us to be gracious too, but shows us to be grateful in the moment for what we have. I think it's easy to look back and say, oh, those were the good old days, but how hard it is to recognize, oh, we're in the good old days now, right? And in the future, we're going to look back on this hopefully and remember it fondly. But hopefully, we look at the future with gratitude too. Um, I think it's I think it's wise to look back and recognize difficulty and recognize how God has led us through that difficulty, not with bitterness, but with expectation towards the future. And I think that's what God has with Moses there is God says, "Hey, don't speak to me about this. This is past and you're not going to cross the Jordan into this land. However, you were obedient in so much and I love you. You were obedient in so much. I will let you look at this land. This is the land that was promised. All this journey I've led up and I've had you lead them. Here is what it is." And that obviously has Moses feeling grateful and probably incredibly humbled. It's a beautiful thing and absolutely worth praying about and applying to our lives. So let's do it. God, I thank you for Bob and for Mary Lou, and I just thank you for the love that they show, Lord, and that God, you have set in their hearts a love for your word and an obedience they can look back at the past and enjoy it, Lord, but live for you in the moment and live looking forward to you and for you, Lord. Again, I thank you for their obedience and their heart for others, Lord. I thank you that you have given them hope and love and grace, Lord. May we apply that to our lives as we serve others, Lord, as we look to do your will. In our day to day, Lord, help us to appreciate what you have given us, Lord. Help us not to be bitter at the past, but to move forward with gratitude. My God, I thank you so, so much for them, Lord. And I thank you infinitely more for your son, Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. Well, Bob, Mary Lou, I love you so much. And for anyone else watching, know that I appreciate you. And I will plan on seeing you tomorrow. Have a good one.